Hello everybody, my name is Lydia, and I went through toxic mold for about 4 to 5 years, and it was one of the worst experiences of my life. Just an all-encompassing illness and sickness. I do talk about that quite frequently on this channel, but during that time I learned a lot. And that experience, although very traumatic, also taught me a lot about myself and shifted me and shaped me into a different person, the person that I am today, even. And definitely molded me in a way that I never could have expected. So before toxic mold, I feel like I've talked a little bit about this way back on my channel, like a long time ago. What was that accent? I don't know. I don't know why I did an accent, but I talked about this a little bit ago on my channel, maybe like a year, 2 years ago. I don't know. But I want to talk about this a little bit more in depth. And before toxic mold, I was a person who loved all things grand and big and larger than life. And I loved the way, like, and I mean that in all senses. I loved fashion that was all-encompassing, just very statement, larger than life, expensive, extravagant. Extravagance was everything to me and more. I loved big old Victorian houses. Ooh, sorry, did you see me spit? I'm so sorry. Yikes. I was just very into all of that. I loved the idea of all of that. I loved being like, or the idea of being like a business lady, you know what I mean? Like, I've got an empire, which I still find value in some aspects, but that was a leading factor for me. I also felt deeply connected to the upper middle class. I still do in ways, but I have a more of appreciation for lower class or just middle class and my roots and all of that. So, but I had this fascination with the upper middle class and achieving and striving for that and just all of that. And with that, I wanted the big house, the job, just all of it. And I had an appreciation for Newfoundlands as a dog and trees, in terms of nature. I loved trees. The biggest tree, the better tree, you know, that sort of thing. The biggest, strongest tree I loved. And I loved all of that. And I strived for all of that. And I liked the concept of you can just pay somebody to fix it for you. You don't have to get your hands dirty fixing it. Your job is your job. And you allow other people to do their other jobs and paying them handsomely, and treating them well. I also loved children, and I love the concept of having many children. I liked bigger is better. So many children, big house, big fancy job, fancy car, like, but not just fancy for the sake of fancy, fancy like, not like fancy like modern, fancy like I loved a good vintage like Cadillac, like 1954, 1955 Cadillac, big Victorian house, a lot of statement pieces that are timeless. I loved that. Things that bring community together. I loved big community. I loved social, being a socialite, having parties. Like this was my concept of where I wanted my life to be as an adult. I just loved that idea of like, I host parties and it's like a fun gathering and they're all themed and everything is a lot of that. I just thought that would be a lot of fun, and I know that a lot of that was also rooted in a lot of my insecurity, a lot of my like childhood trauma, which doesn't have to be, you know, what people think of trauma, but whatever. I know that all of that stemmed from that. Because I also, you know, disliked when I felt like I had to do things on my own. I always strived to make enough money to where other people could do things for me and I could focus on my job or the things that I do best. Like, everybody has their job and everything's organized and everything is in the's place and everybody's doing, you know, the job that they're designated to do, and just all of that was very important to me. Then when I fell sick from toxic mold, instead of my life growing bigger, it started to shrink on a massive scale. And we lived in a smaller city, which was okay to me, but because I loved the area and stuff, but instead of my life expanding and growing, my life started to shrink. And we lived in this 2-story house, which was, you know, not huge by any means. It was just a normal size house, but it was 2 stories, and it began to we began to have to sell everything that we owned, and little by little, and we were getting sicker and sicker, and my belongings began to shrink, and I began to get extremely sick, and I resisted for a long time and felt depressed for a long, long time. This resistance against my life growing smaller, this resistance against things changing and not going the way that I sought them to be. And instead of dressing more extravagant and more fun, expressing my own personality, instead I was gaining weight at a rapid pace. And I do mean rapid. I gained 100 pounds within like a couple of months, and the mold sickness was causing extreme inflammation in my body. So I was also dressing in Walmart clothes and didn't have enough money to continually buy different clothes as I was gaining weight. And so the clothes that I had on my body were the clothes that I had on my body. And things just changed in a very big direction for me, and they didn't seem to be changing for the better anytime soon. And they stayed that way for a long time. And I knew at some point, I think maybe it was like 1.5 years into it, maybe more. It's hard to tell. Time is kind of a blur during that time. Like I said, I was in it for 4 to 5 years. I actually don't know if I mentioned that in this video. Quite a long time. And so I thought to myself, I don't think I can just keep resisting this and keep falling under this depressive spell, because I kept wishing that my life had been what I had imagined in my head. And instead it was looking so small. And instead of resisting, I went with it. And well, I resisted a lot at first, a lot. And it just caused me so much depression, so much depression. I was so upset, and it was this strive to get better fast so I could get back to where I was, to get back to the person that I was. And I had to work on myself a lot during this time. Because with that larger than life personality and all of this stuff that I strived for, it's actually funny because my personality wasn't super large, like it wasn't larger than life necessarily. I actually caused myself to enjoy things that were extravagant while trying to be eloquent and not allowing myself to delve into my inner child, my inner fun, my inner spirit. It was like, I'm too focused on being an adult, you know, like I want children. I'm not the child though, you know, that type of thing. And so, it was kind of an interesting thing there, but I had a lot of, resentment in my heart, and a lot of emotions that I had to unpack and delve through. And there came a point where I was in this toxic mold where I was like, I can't resist this anymore. I can't fight against this anymore. I can't continue to strive to get out of this because it doesn't look like this is ending anytime soon. I've got to embrace it and use this time, because I couldn't physically work at this point. I couldn't physically do anything at this point. I could barely physically think half the time. I was a complete zombie. And at this point, when I did think, the moments when I could have mental clarity, I was like, I need to just use this time to work on myself, because I can't do anything else. This is all I can do. And so when I wasn't crying my eyes out, when I wasn't terribly depressed, when I wasn't asleep, when I wasn't, in the in-betweens, when I could think, I was working on myself emotionally, trying to think through why I was the way that I was, why I felt those things, and why I felt the resentment, why I felt that I was striving so hard to live this grandeur life, this extravagant life. Why was that so important to me? And when I come to that root, why did I come to that conclusion? And how do I deconstruct that? How do I deconstruct the extravagance? And do I want to deconstruct the extravagance? Because maybe there's something more to living small that I haven't seen before. And I clung on to the extravagance for a long time, and that want to live that life, and I had this refusal in my heart to let that go. But I didn't know how long I was going to be in this toxic mold situation. And so eventually I started to open up my heart just a little bit to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there's something more to living small, living simply. And I said, at the very least, I'm going to enjoy my time the best that I can here, because I don't want to make this even more miserable on myself. And I said do the best I can, because I will say that it was hell on earth. The entire experience of toxic mold was hell on earth. And I just didn't want to add on more turmoil on myself. And so I made it a point to comfort myself during this time and try to find comfort in living small, even if that meant in the future, even if I allowed in my heart, like, well, in the future when I get out of this, then I'll live extravagantly. But I'm going to put that off. I'm going to put that on hold and just try to open up my heart and my mind to living small for this moment in my life. I have to, because that's all my options are. It's either this or pushing back. So I did that. And that really just looked like, when I was on YouTube, just kind of opening up my eyes to maybe smaller living. Okay, what is it like living in a tiny home for a little bit? What is it like living alternatively? That's kind of an interesting thought. It's like, what about this, Lydia? What about this? And over time, I started to see a change in myself, and it was interesting because I would go out into nature, and that was when I would feel the most clear. And I would begin to notice the moss on the ground more than I ever had before. And there were moments when I would kneel down or sit next to it and just observe it. And just be enthralled by this little planet that was beneath me, this little ecosystem that was beneath me, and how every single bit of moss was so different. And I became so amused by it that when I was when I was back in mold, into the house and out of nature, I was thinking about the moss. And when I would have this yearning to go outside, like, I want to go back out there, I want to go back out in nature, the thoughts of the moss, I guess now you know why my channel's called Thoughts of Moss, huh? Would be in my mind. And I felt so inspired by moss. And I felt a kinship with it. And it was interesting because I no longer felt as big of a kinship to trees. I still love trees. I appreciate trees. I love all sorts of different types of trees, but I felt a kinship with moss during this time. It almost felt like the tree aspect was in the shadows. And I delved deeper into this and allowed myself to appreciate the moss, which was big. And during this time, I also started becoming very interested in different dog breeds than I was before. Notably, during this time, we also have, you know, even though I've spent a lot of time outdoors in nature when I felt mentally clear, when I was able to, we also have extremely harsh winters where I live, extremely harsh. And like, it looks like Narnia every winter. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, and I love it here. But it was interesting because I had a resistance to the snow before, like, yeah, it's pretty, and I liked the area that we lived in more because of the water aspect. We live near Lake Superior, and that in the beginning was more what drew me to this area. And I always had an issue with cold, and I mean, I'm also anemic, so that was a big aspect of it too, but I didn't embrace the cold that much. I was always like, ooh, I'm not a big fan of winter per se, which was a little bit ironic living here, but you know. And so I always had that sort of pushback until it was this time when I started to appreciate the small things of life. Because as I started to appreciate the small things of life, the living less, the living minimal, the living alternatively to what I was before, also came the appreciation for slowness and observing things and thinking, spending time in my own thoughts, spending time slowing down my observation skills and honing in on paying attention to one thing at a time, one detailed thing at a time, instead of being Miss Busybody socialite, you know? Isolation. Some may say a winter of your life. And you know, then I would watch a lot of videos where people would talk about the winters of your life. You know, a lot of Christian people talk like that, or they use that sort of terminology to refer to times in your life where it isn't very plentiful and things are a little rough, a little isolated. And I liked that terminology. This winter in my life right now, I'm going through a winter of my life that really stuck with me. And I was like, maybe it's time that I embrace winter, because I had such a pushback about winter. And I lived in a place that was very snowy, and I lived in a place where I had nothing but time on my hands. I lived in a time in my life where I had nothing but time to just think and embrace my situation. And so I took this time to also embrace winter and the winter season and the cold, and then I began to enjoy it. I began, paired with the observation aspect, I started to observe winter and observe the snowflakes and find an appreciation for the ice forms and the element of it all. And then that had this newfound love within me for winter that started to bloom, that started to increase. And this newfound love for things that are cold, things that are desolate, things that are isolated. And maybe I enjoy isolation a little bit. Maybe I enjoy time alone in my thoughts. Maybe I'm enjoying the deafness that winter brings. The slowness. Nothing's out and about in winter. There's no expectation either, which was huge because I felt this expectation, but it was all on myself. I put the expectation on myself to do, and then I dropped the expectation. And I was able to heal a lot more when I was in toxic mold because I couldn't thrive with that expectation over me that I was putting on myself. Because all I could do in that moment was stop. Toxic mold put a stop on my life, and I had to embrace it. And so with that, I started watching winter camping videos, and I started becoming so interested in the Yakutian Laika. And they are a little bit more active, but they are these amazing dogs that I love so dearly, that they were extremely versatile. They currently live in the coldest inhabited place in the world, Yakutia. Look that up, or Oymyakon. Go look that up in Russia. Amazing, amazing place. Fascinating to research. They live there, they come from there, and they are these resilient dogs. Resilient, and they are versatile. And that was another thing, is I was not interested in being versatile in the past. I was very interested in honing down on my niche, honing down on what I'm good at. And I don't want to be good at a bunch of different, there's no need to be good at a bunch of different things, okay? I do my job, and then I pay other people to do their job, and we're all good at the thing that we're good at, and I'm paid to do my job, and we're all, we're all in our boxes, we're all in our categories, and we're all, I don't need to learn how to do stuff to be resilient. That was a huge thing for me. I did not like fixing things myself, because I had no interest in being resilient and self-sufficient at all back in the day. And the thing is sometimes, this is what I learned up here in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, is that sometimes you call people to do a job and they don't show up. In some places, in the bigger cities, you won't find that as much, but yeah, in the smaller cities, you're gonna call somebody and they're probably not gonna show up because they live on you per time. And that's how it was for us. And that is a big part of why the toxic mold lasted for so long. And so that too, in part, worked in tandem to show me that sometimes being resilient and learning a bunch of different tasks, learning how to do things on your own is so crucial. And it sparked this newfound love for this dog breed, because they are resilient and they can do a million different jobs. And they historically have done a million different jobs. They've done herding and dog sledding, and they used to be mail carriers at some point. And they're good at being adaptable. I mean, they're these fascinating dogs. And that's a dog breed I probably never would have thought about before, because I was so interested in Newfoundland, During the same time, I started becoming very interested in like Akita Inu as well. And because they are also very resilient. And they stand up for themselves, which is another thing. I was not interested in standing up for myself before. I loved the idea of looking eloquent and looking a certain way, but being very passive, very gentle. I didn't want to be too much. Like I liked the looks of being too much, but my personality, I liked keeping it a very gentle, mild-mannered, easygoing, go with the flow, kind of sweet overall type of a person. I didn't like being too much of a boat rocker. And that is from also childhood trauma. But as I began researching the Yakutian Laika, who are very resilient, and then researching the Akita Inu, who are very self-protective, and they still are dignified and reserved, but they are self-protective, and they can have an aggressive streak, an aggressive side. These things started to also come up in me, that I can stand up for myself. I can have a voice. And that even though I'm at my lowest point in my life, I don't have to treat myself as though I am less than. And this sort of newfound resilience started to pop up in me, and that I can, and it started to give me this encouragement that I can spring back. I am resilient. This toxic mold is not going to take me down, because there was a good long time where I was like, this might be the end of me. Like, I don't know how life is going to look after this, and I don't know if there will be an after this. And researching them, and then also in my spare time looking up people doing things that were resilient, going winter camping, woodworking, working with their hands, being just people who can do skills, multiple different skills, watching people do skills gave me encouragement that in my future I can do many different skills. In my future I can be capable, and I am capable now. I have many skills now. Not letting the toxic mold be the end of me, reminding myself that I am resilient and I will get through this, and I can stand up for myself. Those were all very crucial to my growth. And I began to enjoy living a little bit less, not having as many objects. I began to kind of enjoy the minimal life, and not just having things to have things, you know? Because I liked high quality, but I also liked back then the aspect of new. Let's get new things all the time. High quality, sure, but like new. Like, you know, getting new house decor every season, like that type of thing, you know, the upper middle class life. And I stopped finding any value in that during this time. And it started to shift my mind into liking high quality, but something that can last a lifetime. And not crying over spilt milk. Like, I used to hate the idea of something breaking in the past. Like, something broken can never be refixed. It's kind of how my mindset was in the past before toxic mold. And something broken is a devastation. And it's something that can't be fixed again. And it's terrible. And you just got to get new. And this new resilience, this new person that I was becoming, started to become interested in fixing things for myself, turning it into something else. Yes, its old meaning isn't the same. It's not the same now that it's broken, but it's maybe elevated. It's something different. You can use this part for something else. And this was something that I had never experienced before. I had never experienced this mindset. And during this time, when I just got out of toxic mold, I accidentally broke a mug. I dropped it. It was a mug at a store, and I, of course I had to buy it, but I then, for the first time, did a kintsugi repair on it, which is like I believe it's Japanese. It's a way of repairing not plaster, clay objects, or just objects around your house. And you can repair mugs and plates and all sorts of things by having this glue it together, and then having it be painted gold, or at least that's how I did it. And it sort of turns it from what its original purpose was into this new beautiful art piece. Or in my case, I get to use it still as a mug that holds things rather than a mug that I drink out of, but its purpose is still there. And that's the idea of kintsugi, is that this that nothing is truly ever broken. You know, everything can be turned into something else. And this was a new concept to me. I never believed this, never wanted to adhere to that belief before. And so these were substantial changes within my character and my personality. And I'm so thankful to toxic mold in that aspect. It's so weird to say that, because it was hell on earth. Every aspect, almost every aspect of the actual toxic mold was hell on earth. But I'm so thankful for that aspect of it, because I don't think I ever would have changed into this new person. It's just really interesting. And during this time that I was interested in moss, right when I got out of toxic mold, my mom got me this book, Gathering Moss, by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And it's a fascinating book, and it has a lot of information about moss. She talks a lot about how mosses is formed and how it's like what it's comprised of, and its shallow root system, and just all of that. And all of that was super spiritually significant to me. But I think it's aspects of how it thrives living so small was also a huge aspect of me too, or an aspect that was important to me too. And it made so much sense why I was connected to moss through all of that time. After reading this book and then doing a lot of the spiritual connections myself, it made a lot of sense why I was so connected to moss, because they live so small. They are small. And they thrive by being small. If they were grand, if they would have been grand, the wind would have swept them up. The wind would have made them nothing. And so that's kind of the blessing about being small in those moments, is that they get this isolation period, and they get the protection of that isolation period, even though they are so tiny and they might, you know, go unnoticed by some. There's so much power in that. And so that's a lot of what I learned while being in toxic mold, and those are some of the lessons that will stick with me forever. I have become, you know, reappreciative of, you know, the Newfoundlands and larger than life living. I get it. I definitely get it, and I appreciate it. But these are lessons that I don't think I can ever turn back from. These were very crucial to my character today. And, you know, still to this day, the Yakutian Laika and the Akita Inu are my two favorite dog breeds, and there's something there that, you know, makes a lot of sense to my character today. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. My name is Lydia, and I hope you have a wonderful day.